So, we know Assetto Corsa Competizione prides itself on being one of the most realistic racing sim titles around, especially when it comes to GT racing. Obviously, it's the official game for GT World Challenge, it's got all the licensing, and GT World Challenge, as we know, is the main series when it comes to GT3 cars. And yeah, in the last few months, I've been testing the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo across all the different sim platforms, as it's the car I have the most experience in real life. Now it's ACC's turn. Out of all the sim titles, I'd say ACC is the title I have the most hours in. It's just under 2,000 hours, I think, now, which is quite a lot. I'd say also, in years gone by, it's been the sim I've used typically to train for a real-life test or a real-life race to get me up to speed in a GT3 car. But yeah, no bias here. I mean, we're going to be very objective. What's good, what's not. And yeah, how realistic is the McLaren 720S GT3 Evo on Assetto Corsa Competizione? Let's find out. Okay, so we're in the server at Spa, of course, and just a couple of things to get out there before we start driving. So, you know, QNOS make the game, obviously. It's not a new game. It's probably at the end of its cycle, to be fair, ACC. It's been on a slight downward trajectory for a while since AC Evo has been semi-released. And yeah, I'd definitely say ACC's days are slightly numbered. But again, just to get out there, I'm not biased at all in this video. I know over the years, a lot of people have thought, you know, I'm heavily affiliated with QNOS and Assetto Corsa Competizione, but this is completely objective. I've had no contact with the devs before making this video, so these are my honest and true thoughts. Of course, it's worth getting out there as well. This is the SRO GT World Challenge spec McLaren, so there's a few different specs as we've covered on previous videos in this series. Some of them are IMSA spec, some of them are DTM spec. This is SRO GT World Challenge spec, so it's just worth noting that as well. So, like we always do in these videos, the first thing we will critique is the sound. I mean, I'm going to pretend I've not heard this sound a million times. I've had so many hours in this game in this car. But I can tell you firsthand, sound isn't great. You know, I know we always critique the sound, but the in-car audio in this game, in this car, is not great at all. I think the sound and the tone of it, and it's completely off. But what I would say about ACC generally is that the onboard audio in some cars is quite good. Like, I think the Porsche, and it has a good amount of detail in the onboard audio. You can hear lots of various noises, bumps, wax, and things flying around in the cockpit and stuff like that, and curve sounds. And so there's a lot of good things about the in-car audio on this game. I just think the actual sound of the McLaren is not very good. So, you know, we can safely say that. So on the topic of audio, if we quickly just see what the external audio is like, which is usually pretty good in most games. As we know, it's a bit easier to capture. It's good. It's good. I think there are better external car audios for the McLaren in other platforms, but it's in the right ballpark. I think there maybe iRacing's is better, but I think it's still pretty good. So yeah, again, confirming that external car audio is a million times easier for game developers to capture than it is internal car audio. And yeah, quick one, guys. So we've done this test or experiment on iRacing, Automobilista 2, Le Mans Ultimate, Race Room, and now Assetto Corsa Competizione. Let me know in the comments below which other titles I should do this on before making a final conclusion video, sort of tier list style video where I rank them from first to last. What other games, what other platforms should I get in there? I'm thinking maybe the original Assetto Corsa is a good one, but if there's any others you want to see, just so I don't forget them, let me know. Okay, so the next topic we'll talk about is the graphics engine. So it's Unreal Engine 4. So initially when ACC came out, it was pretty awful, like not well optimized at all, really low FPS. But over the years, it's obviously got better and better, and it's pretty good. I mean, from a visuals perspective, I do think ACC is one of the best looking titles out there. I know it's not the easiest to run, so you need a pretty decent PC to get decent FPS, but I'm on a widescreen right now on a 5070 Ti. Maximum graphics, absolutely maxed out. And I'm getting a consistent 150 FPS, which it's not bad. Don't get me wrong, I think other games are probably optimized slightly better, but I think, you know, other games also don't have the graphical intensity that ACC does. I think it does look really good. And ignore my driving, I'm not focusing on that at the minute, but it can be a bit of a ropey, rough experience with lots of cars and stuff. You need a bit of a beast PC to run it, but when it's all up and running, it does look very good. Yeah, another thing as well that's pretty obvious is this is an old rendition of Spa. It's a laser scan version, but it's from what, like 2018, 2019, so it's quite old. So Eau Rouge is different, and some of the runoff areas are different, and there's been quite a few updates in the last few years to Spa, so it's worth taking that into account. There are a lot of the other titles are in the same boat, to be honest. I'll tell you what, before we do any more driving stuff, let me just quickly run you through the setup. So I'm running a full... It's not a brand new setup, so it's a little bit dated and a little bit old, but it is an esports level setup, or it was a few months ago. So you can see pretty much exploiting all of the ACC metas for the most part. Max cambers, very low TC values, brake pad 1 obviously, low fuel. So it's a quality setup, so it's worth saying that as well. Quite soft on the suspension, quite rearward brake bias, minimum steer ratio, damping. Again, very ACC meta-esque sort of damping there. And then aero sort of in the middle, quite jacked up on the rear, minimum front ride height, brake ducts in the right place so you get the perfect braking temps and tyre temps as well. So I think, you know, again, it's worth noting that I know more about ACC setups than I do for most of the other sim titles. So it's always going to be slightly biased when you think about it like that, because I know more about the game than I do other titles. But still, we'll try and make this as fair as possible. One good thing about ACC that I really like is you can see here in the top left, or the middle left of the screen, you can see the track state, and it's optimum right now, which means that's the maximum amount of grip and rubber on the track. There's quite a few different track states, so you've got green, fast, optimum, and when it has wet conditions, it goes from like damp, greasy, very wet, flooded. So there's loads of different track states, which, you know, a lot of sim titles have this, but some of them don't. Like Race Room, for example, it has only one state of grip, so that was a big downfall for me on Race Room, but it's good to see that ACC's got that. So again, that mimics real life very well, because it's never really the same in real life. Day to day it does change in terms of grip levels. On that topic though, I think one negative in that area is the fact that ACC has the same grip level pretty much across the entire track. So although it looks like there's marbles, you can't really hear the marbles, but more importantly, it doesn't feel like you're driving on marbles. So if I go offline here, I have the same grip basically as I do on the rubbered line. At least it feels that way. I don't know if it is numerically slightly different in the coding of the game, but yeah, in real life it's definitely more extreme if you go offline. So if I approach Blanchimont completely off the line onto the marbles, I would feel absolutely, well, not absolutely no grip, but very little grip in the next few corners. So yeah, that's a slight negative. Hopefully that's something that gets improved in AC Evo. So yeah, if we now focus on the feeling of the car, so probably the most important thing when it comes to realism. The first thing with ACC and the FFB is there is slight numbness in the middle of the steering rack. So sort of like the first 30 degrees feel quite numb, which is a little strange. But when you really load up the tyres, it starts to come alive a bit more. When you're going through a corner and you've loaded up the tyres quite a lot, you get a decent amount of detail and quite nice force feedback, to be honest. I've always been a fan of ACC force feedback. It's changed over the years with like the different tyre model updates and stuff like that. But yeah, I think one thing that ACC does really well is it captures the feeling of weight and how heavy these GT3 cars feel, probably better than any other game. So like, I don't know how they do that exactly. Maybe it's the style of force feedback or the detail that's within it, but it just feels like when you're going through a corner, even if you turn the force feedback down, it feels like you're driving a very heavy car. And they are heavy. I mean, they're between 1,200 and 1,300 kilos. So they don't feel light. Even with the power steering in real life, they don't feel light at all. They do feel heavy. But yeah, back into a negative point. So if you saw my video the other week about braking being unrealistic in sim racing, I did critique ACC quite a lot in terms of the braking being quite far away from realism. I think, you know, we can quickly touch on it again. It's just the way you stamp to 100% like that in a heavy braking zone, let the ABS do the rest of the work, which means there's no real finesse under braking. I'd suggest to go and watch that video because it can explain it in full exactly what I mean by that. But I'd say it's ACC's biggest weakness is the way you brake is quite far away from reality. On the flip side though, I mean, ACC's braking does have a positive side to it, and particularly the topic of the brake temps influencing the tyre temps and the tyre pressures. It does that very well. So that's a very realistic thing. When you're behind safety car in real life, you can have the tyre pressures on the dash, and as soon as you start braking and weaving and doing this sort of motion behind a safety car, providing I don't get motion sick, which sometimes happens, but if I forget to take my tablets, obviously, you can see the pressures and the temps visibly start to go up as you can in the game. So they've captured that very well, and a lot of other sim titles don't do that. So I think it's a really nice thing that ACC does capture that. But yeah, I suppose a bad thing. So I'm trying to keep it very well balanced, and you know, good thing, a bad thing, a good thing, a bad thing. A bad thing is, in my opinion, the way the cars go over bumps and curbs in ACC is a bit too extreme. A lot of the curbs and a lot of the bumps really upset the car, and in real life it just doesn't. It's just not the case. I mean, these cars just glide over the majority of bumps and curbs. At least it feels that way. It just feels like you're hitting a really solid object, and in real life it's a lot smoother going over such a curb. So yeah, it can make the game slightly frustrating to drive at points because it just makes it harder work than it needs to be. I think a big part of that problem is the way ACC car suspension behaves over curbs. I don't think it's all to do with the curbs and the bumps of the track model. I think the way the suspension takes those curbs and bumps isn't quite right. So that's why you see, I mean, we've seen many examples over the years of cars, you know, going over a bump, the suspension compressing and then completely having a fit, and the car just effectively goes to the moon. It just loses all control and bounces into the barrier or something like that. So yeah, it's very unpredictable as well, that thing that happens with the suspension. So again, if you're prepping for an esports race and that happens, it's over the years it has been a bit of a frustration, particularly in the McLaren as well. The McLaren is the worst for it in terms of the way it handles bumps and curbs. So yeah, in terms of slip angles, so it's generally pretty reflective of how you would drive and extract the lap time in real life, front and rear. The way you utilize the grip from the tires really isn't that far off, to be honest. However, I think it's got slightly worse over time. Looking at Alien lap times now and seeing the onboards and seeing the videos of their hot laps and stuff, you know, it's usually TC all the way off and then lots of sliding front and rear to basically manipulate the car and get the most lap time from it, which that's the part that's not very realistic. You know, you never see anyone in real life drifting effectively through corners with TC off. Yeah, you just don't see real life pole laps or race laps being driven like that. So I think from memory, back when I first got into ACC, like in 2021, 2020, that wasn't the case. Now, I don't know if that's because people at the time hadn't figured that out. Maybe that was the quickest way to drive the game back then as well, but no one was doing it. Whereas now, it's certainly the best way to drive and get the ultimate lap time from every car. But yeah, it looks a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, overall, to summarise that point, I'd say that last 0.5% of lap time just comes from, you know, if you want to get a bit more grip from the front tyres, you can just crank the steering lock on like that, and the car will grip up. Same with the rears. If you want to get a little bit more lap time from the rears, you can sort of effectively just drift through the corner and just whack the throttle on And even if you have a massive tank slapper in a way, it doesn't really slow you down. So I think that's what I'm trying to explain, is that's the unrealistic bit. But yeah, the way you utilize the grip up until that point is pretty good, to be honest. That's why I've always enjoyed using it for real life racing prep, because it's not too far away. And yeah, generally speaking, I like the way the tyres operate in an ACC. You know, the tyre pressure's having a window, the temps having a window. You can have them too cold or too hot. Obviously, other sim titles do that as well, but it's just a good plus point for ACC. Wet weather physics are not so good, so nowhere near iRacing level. Very basic. The grip across the entire track is pretty much the same. So you see typically the conventional dry racing line is what people do in the wet, and that's how you get the most lap time. Which, yeah, as we know, wet lines and braking offline and stuff of that nature is typically how you drive in real life in the wet. Okay then, so as we always do in this series, we'll do a little hot lap at the end here, just to see what the car is like on the limit. And, you know, I've not done any practice laps here, but I mean, there's not going to be a world record, but we'll do our very best just to see what time we can do and how quick this rendition of the car is on ACC. So, nice straight exit onto the lap, just shifting over 7,000 RPM, braking hard and deep into T1, meeting the apex. Nice straight exit. You really want to try and V off T1. Approaching Eau Rouge is a bit narrower than it is now on this old track, but still, regardless, it's still easily flat. And using all the track at the top as well, just to minimise the scrub. Going down the Kemmel. Approaching Sector 2, we're going to be in third gear throughout the entirety of Le Com. Using all the track up until the edge of the red and yellow curbing. So yeah, you can really abuse track limits in certain sections of this track into P1. Made the apex there, running a little bit wide on exit, but still carried decent minimum into Piff Paff. Going to go into third gear. Into Stavolo 1. Trying to get a good exit off Stavolo 1. You can really, again, use all the track to open up Stavolo 2. And that exit's super important because we've got this massive, it's not straight, but it's a flat out section leading up to Blanchemont, which is easy flat in this game, and it's easy flat in real life, to be honest. Especially on a new tyre and low fuel. And then final chicane, braking just before the 100. Getting a nice straight exit, using all the track. Short run to the line. 16.7, a 2:16.7. So quicker than a lot of the sim titles we've done this experiment on. I think in this particular game though, the esports guys, the absolute aliens on ACC at the minute in this car would probably be down in the low 15s in these temps with this car with no BOP. So that lap itself, you know, that's still over a second off where it should be. However, it's still a quick time compared to Race Room, iRacing and all those games. So just interesting comparing the different BOPs and the different renditions of the cars and seeing what they can do. There's so many variables, you know, different grip, different track length slightly. The games will all have slightly different models of the track. So overall thoughts then. So I've always rated Assetto Corsa Competizione quite highly as a title that can simulate GT3 cars pretty damn well. And to be honest, I still have that opinion. Like all the sim titles we've tested, I think, you know, it has its flaws, of course. But overall, as a package on this specific topic, it's definitely a contender for being the best in this little mini-series we're doing. Is it the outright best? I'm not sure. As always, would love to hear your comments down below, so get down there and let me know what you think. As always, thank you for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all next time. See you later.